Hey, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Christian History. And we are enjoying ongoing conversations when we get to take something particular that happened in this upcoming week and be able to use that as a marker or a spot to kind of do a deeper dive and learn a little bit more information than we knew before we all got started. So, our episode for this week is centered around July 29th. 1974, and it is around what is commonly known as the Philadelphia 11. And these were 11 women who were ordained as priests in the Episcopal Church. And somebody who knows a good bit about that and also maybe even stands on some shoulders of some of those women is Canon Elise Johnstone, who is the rector at St. John the Baptist Episcopal Church in Seattle. So, Canon Johnstone, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
It's good to be with you, Nick. Thank you so
Great.
much for the invitation.
I didn't miss your title up, did I? Or your
You
spotting
did
in the rest of
great.
that.
You did
Okay.
great.
Hot diggity. All right. So tell us just kind of what's so important about this, right? I mean, this whole idea of these women and the timing of all of that, maybe, and why it would be anything that we would even think about in church history.
Very good. Well, so I think it's incredible from a vocational perspective. I think this event is incredibly important.
All right.
'Cause I've been an Episcopal priest for 19 years. I was ordained as a transitional deacon about 20 years ago.
Okay.
And that is and that is how I have been living out my life with the gifts that God has given me in serving congregations and Episcopal dioceses for these last 20 years. And so that's very personal, right?
Hmm.
But it's also connected to a wider community of believers. And so the Episcopal Church, I think, had been wrestling with the question of should who is called to be a priest, who is called to celebrate the Eucharist, to administer the sacraments in those ways, and so the Episcopal Church had actually been setting aside women as deaconesses, and that's a very specific term, deaconess,
Okay.
for a long time before 1974. And I don't know how nitty gritty to get here,
Get as
but
nitty or as gritty. That we're
okay.
all
Well,
about it.
in 19 basically women were allowed to be ordained as deacons before 1974, but not long before. But up until that point, they were only able to be set aside as deaconesses. And that was more of a commissioning and a setting aside as opposed to the term ordination.
Gotcha. For their service, right? I mean, just so that they would do maybe back to the diakonos, right? Or part of that meant, hey, we recognize that you've got these, I'm putting words in the mouth, but I'm just saying that we recognize that you have this ability to be able to be called and to serve within your local church. And so we want to be able to give you this designation. Is that maybe the right word? Okay.
Yes, I think that's fair. Yes, and because there was a recognized gift of service on behalf of these women who were deaconesses. I think about one particular deaconess, Anna Alexander, who served in rural Georgia. She was the church's, I believe, only African American deaconess, and she served the families who were essentially sharecroppers, and she taught countless people how to read
There
and
you go.
and then led a school and really helped people in a very oppressive situation to be able
Sure.
to have some doors unlocked, those doors through education and as well as connecting people to the faith.
Gotcha.
So there were women like Deaconess Alexander, who for many years were doing that kind of work of service, of serving those who were poor, in need, in different ways. And so the church had experienced women's leadership and service in that capacity.
Hmm.
And people had really started looking at, it was really many years before 1974, what is to prohibit this? And there wasn't a whole lot that people could really concretely come up with,
Ah.
rather than it's just maybe not the right time to approach it, right? And so, given, I think, some of the energy and momentum of the civil rights movement,
Mhm.
um, of the women's movement, kind of that growing energy, as well as the fact that the church had these wonderful, faithful servants as deaconesses. And then, in addition to that, we had women's religious orders, so
Mm.
Episcopal nuns, if you will. And then we had some lay. We had lay orders where women would make a vow to commit themselves to prayer and service. One of the ones that comes to mind is an order called the Daughters of the King. And so we had women
Mm.
who were really sharing their gifts, and really helping the church to follow the mission that God had set before us. And so I think there was just an emerging energy. And so once the General Convention, which is the governing body of the Episcopal Church, permitted that women could be ordained as deacons, and that is a specific role in the Episcopal Church, and I can talk about that if that's helpful at some point. But then there was a realization of further momentum. Another piece is that in 1970, the Episcopal Church's governing body, a General Convention, officially seated the first female voting lay members of the convention. And so there was also, that also helped the movement with all of the other things that were happening, leading up to that point. And so that momentum can just continue to grow.
How about that? Well,
We're
now, what do you call those within the Episcopal Church? The Episcopal Church is kind of like the Methodist Church in the sense that it's kind of bicameral, right? I mean, you've got like for the convention and the governing spot, and I may be getting a little bit ahead of but that's kind of the laying the ground of kind of where we're headed. So we're not talking about women being bishops at this
not,
point,
not
not anywhere here at this time frame, but we are saying that in 1970, the General Convention, and what do you call the uh, people who are the lay people that
oh,
are
well, deputies. There's so that
deputies? Okay, so
yes.
those deacons, those women deacons were not only recognized as deacons, but were also made deputies during that
Well,
70,
no,
or was that in
these would
72?
be other women. These would be other women who were lay
Ah,
primarily. Well, there might have been. I have to look and see if there's any
well,
overlap, but primarily we're looking at lay women who were leaders in their local congregations and dioceses,
gotcha,
who were voted upon by their diocese to represent their diocese at the church-wide level,
gotcha.
at the General
And
Convention.
had they been allowed to do that for some period of time, or was that
There
all kind of
was
within the same time frame?
so there was, if I remember correctly, there were at least a few women, and I want to say it's in the late 30s, early 40s,
Oh, wow. Okay.
who's the one I'm nearly positive there was a lay woman from, I think it was Missouri, who served as a deputy. But there was no prohibition against it.
Gotcha.
But when then it was tried,
Right.
there was some pushback, right? Like, and so then there was not a continuity of a large number of female deputies. There was, like I said, there was that pushback once the one, or and again, not that many who had been elected to serve in that capacity. Once that happened, again, there's the pushback. So it was 1970 that those lay women were indeed
I got you.
that,
Okay.
and there was a decent number, a notable number of women who served in that capacity. And so the Episcopal Church's that General Convention is, as you said, bicameral. So there's the House of Deputies, And the House of Deputies actually has two orders, if you, the lay order and then the clergy order.
Okay.
Is heavily priests, but not exclusively priests. So in the sense that deacons and priests would be considered people who could be serving in the clerical order in
Gotcha.
the convention. So that the House of Deputies is half clergy, half laity, and then the House of Bishops is, well, as its
Right.
title reads, is made up of bishops.
Right.
And
Okay.
yeah, so that was another shift that happened in 1970, was the notable number of female lay deputies. And then there was this movement that there was a vote that nearly passed in 1970 to allow women to serve as priests. And then, but it didn't pass. But again, there was a lot of energy.
Sure.
And then in 1973, it came back for a vote. And as you do a lot of work with history, Nick. Sometimes when you start something, sometimes there's a little bit more pushback, right? And so there was some pushback, right, in 1973, and so that was very discouraging. I think that pushback, and so again, there was this realization that there's really not a whole lot of actual prohibition, rather than the official sanctioning, if you will. And so there were a number of women and men. I don't want to say it was just women.
Sure.
Because it wasn't, but it was, and again, the documentary very much shares the story of these just really incredible women, and the amount of advocacy, education, community building, coalition building that happened, that was, I think, done very faithfully, done prayerfully, with really trying to follow where these women saw God calling them to be, trailblazers in this regard. And so let's see here. Oh, I've lost my thought there for just a second. And so they, in 1974, they knew that it should be more than one. It should be a group of women. And in the Episcopal Church, you need to have all ordinations happen by a bishop. That's the word Episcopal.
Sure.
The Greek word episkopos, meaning overseer or bishop, right? So we're a church of bishops. And so you have to have one bishop to ordain either a deacon or a priest. You have to have 3 bishops present to ordain a new bishop, just in case you were curious.
How about that? Well, that's a great way for us just to know, hey, just so our listeners will remember, we were having this really great conversation with Canon Elise Johnstone, and we're learning a whole lot about the Philadelphia 11, and we're getting close to understanding of how those 11 all came together. So I don't want to stop your mojo there, but let's just keep trucking on. So help me out here a little bit, right? So the vote almost passes at the General Convention, and I guess if it had passed and been done, stamped, done, questions over, go ye therefore and do whatever it is that you're going to do. But these, in particular, did these 11 all kind of find and know each other through these conventions? I mean, they'd all been appointed deacons, right? Because there's a process. You don't just hopscotch to bishop, right? I mean, you gotta go. You start at deacon, and then deacon, they see that you're doing a good job or whatever it is that you feel called, and then when you say, "Hey, I feel called to the priest," and I'm putting my words on it, but I feel called to the priesthood.
We can talk more about that if you want.
Right, to be able to do that. Yet there's a way of going through that ordination process of you actually becoming a priest. And so these women, and as I understand it, some of them said, yeah, I'd like to do it, but I don't know if I'm ready to charge that hill right now to be able to do all of that. But they had to kind of find each other, right, enough to know. And then where I think you were headed with was, at the end of the day, you may be willing to go on and be ordained as a priest, but if we don't have three bishops standing there with you to do it, it doesn't count. Is that right, or is that not right?
Well, they really technically only needed one. They
Ah,
really only
okay.
need four to ordain somebody as a priest.
As a priest.
Three
Okay.
bishops to ordain another bishop. So
Gotcha.
that's the
Okay.
distinction.
Okay.
So there was a group of 40 deacons who were women who discerned, am I called to try to do this? Am I called to be ordained a priest, knowing that there is this pushback, on the church-wide level through the General Convention. And 11 of those 40 discerned that they felt called to do that. And that wider group of a coalition, if you will, of the female deacons, as well as lay people, and like I said, and there were some men who were clergy and lay who felt like, that this was something that should happen. I would say, and the documentary very much focuses on the story of the women, which is the absolutely right thing for it to do. But there were other people who supported, and we hear a little bit about those people's stories in the documentary as well.
Right. And there is a documentary for those of who are not, then we'll put that into the show notes, by the way, about where you can find it and be able to. PBS is running it pretty well throughout various stations and local places. And so I'd highly recommend anybody that is interested in this to do it. It's very well done. And so when we're referring to the documentary, that's what we're talking about.
Yes. Thank you,
Okay.
Nick. I
The
appreciate it.
Philadelphia 11, as it is very easily named. Okay, so we don't have to go find out some cute name that it was named. It's the Philadelphia 11, right? It's right there.
That's it. That's it. And that is how the church has referred to these 11 trailblazing women, as well as the Philadelphia 11. And so in the Episcopal Church, when you hear that term, you go, I know who we're talking about, and so they I would say found each other because it was a common a common witness that they felt called to, right? Like and so there was, like I said, very much some coalition building. There were people who had done community organizing, and folks who had different gifts around communication and strategy, and between that and just being very, I think, very prayerful, they discerned that they needed to have more than one woman ordained, and they also discerned that it should be more than one bishop that was present, even though it's not necessary from a church sort of doctrine perspective, but just to sort of, that it couldn't just be a one-off bishop, right? And so then 3 bishops, and there were actually a number of bishops who said that they were really very much, that was something that they wanted to do, but then it ended up being the 3 who did ordain the 11 women in July of 1974. And it was a rough road. There were a lot of people who were very, very supportive of these women's call to ordain ministry as priests. And then there were some folks who were very unsupportive in some really vocal ways. So.
And what was some of those people that were not supportive of this? Some of it seems to be, and this may not be a fair characterization, but some of it may just be, hey, this is an old boys club here. We're not really looking to have you gals be bopping up into the Rotary Club with us here, number one. But number two, we're really kind of hacked off at you 3 bishops that allowed this to happen, because you kind of violated the secret grip here in the world. And again, I don't mean to be silly or flip, but I just mean that there's some of that kind of tradition. No, we're not doing that. No, I can't go back necessarily and tell you chapter, verse, doctrine number BR 549-62. No, okay, that it says that. But we all kind of understand that that's a no, okay? And then there might, I guess, others that would just say, we don't see where that's in doctrine, or we don't see where that's in scripture. We don't see where, Jesus didn't have, these were 12 men. I mean, that kind of thing to do. So was some of that both part of what the pushback was coming from?
I would say very much so. I mean, there was very much a that this is how the church has been for all this time, right?
Think Anne Boleyn. If you don't like it, I mean, we can go right
Right,
far back, right?
right. There was very much, and that sort of the systemic patterns are. It's hard for people to change a perspective. For some people, I think, to see past what the system has presented to them, right? Like I always say, it's hard to kind of tell the kind of water you're swimming in, right? Like because you're
Right.
just swimming, and you're like, oh, that. You mean there's different water? Like the water could be clearer or murkier? And I think there just that sort of vision shift was very much a challenge. And I think it was some folks who saw in things like the civil rights movement that
Mm-hmm.
they could see a different vision, right? Like they could see a church that really did live into there is no distinction between male and female, right? They could see that that there were indeed women in scripture who were considered as leaders, as prophets,
Right.
so that they were able to kind of see that a different vision.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then of
So
course there were the folks who were like, no, no,
no,
don't see a different vision.
we're just not gonna, and that was men and women, right? I mean, there wasn't any, it wasn't just the men that were saying, no, let's don't do this. There were plenty of other women that, right, they just said, this is a no-go. Okay. I mean, this is part of that. How fascinating. So these, and why Philadelphia? And was 11 just the number that said we'll go? I mean, it could have been the Philadelphia 14. I mean,
It
if there
could
had
have been
been
the
another
Philadelphia.
three that wanted
Yes.
to do it, or okay.
It could have been the Philadelphia 14. I mean, we could go with something biblical and be like, you know, uh, before Matthias was added to the number, that's a nice number, 11, right? But
We
it
didn't even
was
have to draw lots, right, to figure out
right,
who it was going to
exactly.
be. We just went with it, right?
Right. But no, it was more that these of the 40 women, those 11 were open to that discernment and taking that journey.
And why Philadelphia? Why this church? Why this particular spot?
Well, deaconesses. So the deaconesses had a particular, there was a history of deaconess organization
Mm,
out of Philadelphia, and so that had some that I think that at least gave a little bit of the sort of the background of why Philadelphia had some import. And then the church where the women were ordained, the Church of the Advocate,
hmm
was was led by just a really prophetic priest, Paul Washington, an African American man, and he offered the location of the church for the ordinations, which there would be I would say a decent number of churches who might say, well, we'd like to offer our space, but we're,
Right.
but the Church of the Advocate was willing to, and I think very much wanted to host this event. And
Right. Well, the vestry got behind him in that, right? It wasn't something like it just said, "Hey, I just woke up one Thursday and thought you gals come down here, let's have a meeting." That's not what that's not what went on. It was very clear. Look, this is what we're doing. This is where we need to go.
yes,
Such as that. So he wasn't just. Uh, uh, it seemed to me, at least, that he was taking care to make sure that when the pushback they knew was going to happen, that he wasn't Lone Ranger in what he was doing. That there were hey, look, my vestry, my church folks, my governing body of my church,
my
my
board's
board's behind this.
yeah,
Okay, so this is a part of where that would happen too. So,
absolutely.
but once they got ordained, right, and that happened, It wasn't like they got a call the next morning to say, "Hey, come over here to fill in the blank church, and we really want to have you as our priest here in, Columbus, Ohio, or whatever." Right?
It was very much an uphill battle, very much uphill. And there were some congregations who were very supportive and very open. Incarnation St. Stephen's in Washington, D.C., Christ Church in Oberlin, Ohio, which of course Oberlin has a history
Sure.
of being a barrier breaker, right?
No
With
doubt.
history of having an integrated and higher education college for it
Oh,
might be the oldest one in the United States. I grew up in Berea, Kentucky, and so
gotcha.
Berea
Right.
College, is one of the oldest coeducational and integrated colleges in America. So I'm always pay attention to those kinds of things. And
Right.
think, but anyway, so Oberlin, the Episcopal Church in Oberlin, but boy, both there was pushback against, especially the clergy leading those churches, that they invited the women to celebrate the Eucharist.
Gotcha.
Big pushback, like ecclesiastical discipline. And so the first and the very first church where the women were invited to celebrate the Eucharist was not an Episcopal church. It was Riverside
Mm.
City, which of course has just a deep history of
Social
advocacy.
progressive movements is right. Right.
In fact,
Hmm.
Dr. King was very much associated with his prophetic witness out of Riverside Church, and so
Right.
yeah. But it was, I mean, the women both before their ordination and after, they received really, I mean, death threats, hate mail. It was really hard.
Yeah.
That went on, and while there were congregations and people who very much believed and were very supportive of their ordinations, the negativity also continued for a long time. And I would say, I mean, it's hard for me to say that. I mean, there are some communities and some folks that push back. I would say on the whole, that has diminished hugely across the
Hmm.
church, but I would not say that it is gone. It is not gone.
Right. Gotcha. Gotcha. Interesting. Interesting. So, but eventually, not crazy eventually long, but eventually then the General Convention came back and said, "Hey, we're going to put this on the books, okay? And we're going to take the subject of shouldn't, should have, whatever. I mean, right, bishops were called together, I think, after this ordination happened, and what are we going to do about this? And no, you're not. And a lot of these folks got, I mean, got like you said, there's church discipline and other things that were happening, but you take it off the table when the convention votes and says story's over, right? And so
This is now the yeah. So in 1976, the General Convention voted that
every 2 years is generally when the convention, every three.
every
Okay.
three. Yeah,
Okay.
every
Okay.
three. So 70, 73, 76.
Gotcha.
And so the women's ordination was approved at the 1976 General Convention. And then the women who were ordained in 1974, as well as there were four women who ordained out of Washington, D.C. in 1975, who are referred to as the Washington Four. So those women's ordinations were regularized, if you will.
Gotcha.
And then all women who were ordained after that 1976 convention were regularly ordained.
Right. There wasn't anything and those four, right? I mean, in Washington, didn't it kind of not only just kind of make the point, but it helped people understand this wasn't just some anomaly of these 11 that were just mad at the world and decided they wanted to do it because they were troublemakers or something. No, this is a thing. Okay. I mean, so this didn't just go away, right? This is a thing that we're about.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And so, and I'm going to tell you now about how old I am.
Okay,
Because
easy.
so I was born in this period of time, the sort of the mid 70s. And so, for the well, there were women who were ordained as priests my whole life. And then the General Convention, almost all of my life, the General Convention has approved the ordination of women.
Yeah.
And it was, I think, a slow process, but Episcopal faith communities saw that women did have the gifts of preaching and teaching to serve as priests, to be able to administer the sacraments, and that they were faithful pastors. And so that grew. And now we have a large number of ordained women who are priests in the Episcopal Church. And so, like I said, I've been, ordained 19 years as a priest. And so, and many congregations in the Episcopal Church have been being led by women and are currently being led.
Well,
And they serve in all different kinds of capacities as well.
so wrapping us up here real quick, though, tell us about, just off the top of your head, of those 11, you don't have to go chapter and verse each of the 11, but of the 11 that were ordained, some of them went on to go on and serve as a priest, right? Some of them just said, I don't know if this is my thing. Some of them said, I think I'm gonna go be a Methodist. I don't want to. I'm not going to hang around and do this. I mean, it wasn't like the 11 locked arms the whole time and went forward all lockstep for the rest of the
I mean, the
tenure, right?
majority of them
Majority
continued.
did, right?
Yes, the majority of them continued as, as in service as Episcopal priests, and some of them are still alive and,
Yeah.
and serving in different capacities. And then there were, I mean, it was hard.
I imagine.
It was, I mean, these women were there was a lot of negativity and vitriol. I mean, like I said, they got death threats. Like, I don't think I've ever received a death threat. Not a serious one anyway. Um, and yeah, and so I mean, I have some sympathy for the women who said, I'm this this is not the right thing at this point, right? But the majority of them did continue on, and some of them have died. Like Jeanette Picard was older when she came to be ordained. She's a fascinating human, just a brilliant scientist. And then some of them, like I said, are still alive and serving in different capacities.
About that.
It's been 50 years, so
Sure.
they are mostly sort of in retirement, but still, that doesn't mean that they don't preach and preside and make presentations, that sort of thing. So,
How about that? Have you ever hung out with any of them?
honestly, I have not.
Oh, well, that's your bucket list, right?
That's right, exactly. There's still more things to do in the church. Exactly. But they are women that I admire greatly, and I'm grateful for the road that they hoed, because without them and others who came after them, I would not have been able to follow the call that I think that I've been able to follow, and that's been a huge blessing. I was sponsored for ordination by a wonderful congregation that was founded to be a bastion against the ordination of women. And it's a sweet church, a wonderful church in Kentucky. And so as I was sort of discerning and my rector was very supportive. He was very, very supportive of discernment and trying to help me sort of sort through what was God calling me to do. And I said, but this congregation is so, they won't be supportive. He said, they know you. You are a child of this congregation. They know your gifts and your skills, and so don't give them a chance. Give them a chance, and they were incredibly supportive. So
Interesting. How about that? Well, we have learned. I tell you what, I always learn way, way, way more than I ever knew whenever we start an interview and conversation like this. And so it really helps paint so many pictures of understanding the different components of Christian history. Like I enjoy being able to say Jesus didn't give the apostles a three-ring binder and say this is exactly how you're going to do it.
well, you're supposed to do it, right?
So we've we've figured these things out, and things start to roll that particular way. Canon Elise Johnstone, thank you so very, very much for joining us today and helping us to learn more about the Philadelphia 11. So, folks that would like to learn more, we hope that you will take some time to check out our website at the centerforchristianhistory.com and maybe follow some more podcasts and come back and learn even more things that help us understand about all great things Christian history.
Thank you so much, Nick.